The United States has some of the most well-known professional sports teams, and yet I would imagine that soccer is not one of the first ones that comes to your mind. The United States men's national soccer team has faltered in the past few years and gained prestige not only among professional sports in the United States, but among the soccer community as well. With them not qualifying for the 2019 FIFA World Cup held in Russia, we are left to wonder where it is that they need to improve. Some might blame the coach for untactful strategies and for placing young, inexperienced players, whereas players like Tim Howard, Landon Donovan, Clint Dempsey, and Michael Bradley have already passed their prime or have already retired. These top-notch U.S. players are some of the best of the past decade, but we cannot rely on our past. Hi, I'm LeoMendez, a 12th grade Bullitt County 4-H'er. As a goalkeeper in a player development program in the United States that has competed in Europe, I have seen firsthand the difference in youth development. My view is that the biggest reason for the gap in U.S. men's play versus other countries is that there is no proper strategy for the development of youth players in the United States. This can be blamed for the inadequate mentality in soccer culture, the lack of a defined top league, and the desire to make too much money and business from the sport. Because after all, we have as many, if not more resources than other countries to create the most elite soccer players. Parents of young children interested in playing sports have many factors to consider when signing them up. In many countries where soccer is the national sport, the development of these youth players is a no-brainer. In many European countries, the competitive development of these youth players begins at the age of 4 or 5. In the US, however, the development of these players will usually begin at 4 or 5, but it is introduced as more of a recreational sport with very little focus required. Our delayed attention to true skill development puts youth in the U.S. behind even at a very young age. A 9 or 10-year-old in the U.S. may begin focusing on his skill development. However, a 9 or 10-year-old in Europe will now begin focusing on the true idea of the strategy of the game. Many players in the U.S. have a shorter window of time to develop their soccer IQ, compared to youth in other countries that have been focusing on soccer for many more years. Foundationally, only a few youth soccer players in the United States ever achieve this high level of play. In Europe, it is very common for most elite soccer players to go professional at the age of 16. On the other hand, in the US, many players will begin playing at the collegiate level before they get their first glance at the professional level. Another major difference is what the game plays and it's playing in the role of the games in the national culture. In the US, we would consider the football and baseball to be America's sports, but in other countries, soccer is king. In terms of viewership, the World Cup has more viewers than the Super Bowl. For instance, when Germany beat Argentina in the 2014 FIFA World Cup held in Brazil, there was over 1 billion people tuned in. On the other hand, for the 2015 Super Bowl, there were only 160 million people tuned in. This goes to show the emphasis that other countries place in watching their national sport. In the US, much of the general public lacks knowledge of the game. Often when watching soccer games in the United States, those in the crowd only cheer for goals that are scored or defended. On the other hand, many European countries, the most in the audience, know the game so well they are dissecting technique and get excited when a productive series of passes are completed to create a scoring opportunity. This attention to detail shows the passion and desire that those in other countries place in seeing their teams do well. When it comes down to it, the players that make it to the highest level in any sport are those that are willing to make the necessary sacrifices. At the youth level, players will usually compete in their local club, and some are content with playing there even if their club isn't the strongest. Personally, I've had to make many long-distance travels in order to compete at the highest level. I compete with a team in Peachtree City, Georgia, that requires a 3-hour travel for training alone. Other players will even move to their city to play with a top-tier team. The strongest teams are always teams that are willing to sacrifice their body, time, and energy to reach their goals. Strategy for player development in the United States is very different from Europe. Our cultural sports norm is to focus on the star athlete, and we want them to because of our inherent desire to win. Oftentimes, we only encourage the most elite to develop their skill set. In other countries, however, a player with a weakness in his game is challenged to improve and not give up. Player development is treated very differently due to a tiered approach. For example, a coach may bring a player that is not as physically developed as his own age group to an age group below. Now, instead of being technically beat instead of physically, they can now develop their skills at their own pace, so that they can eventually come back up with their own age group. Vice versa, if a player is very advanced, they will be brought up in age group so they can continue growing their skill set even quicker. Now, the lack of a defined top league and too many mediocre leagues invite players, coaches, and directors in disagreement with their clubs or leagues to create new clubs or competitions. However, the only valid reason to create these new multiple leagues is to shorten long-distance travel due to the size of the United States. On the other hand, this could lead to dispersion of talent and less competition. Ideally, all soccer clubs would be under one league, with one top soccer league, with multiple levels beneath it. In the United States, 3 associations control 3 different competitions: the United States Soccer Federation, the United States Youth Soccer, and U.S. Club Soccer. This not only leads to too many competitions, but it allows scattered player potential because of the undefined level of play. The United States Soccer Federation is claimed to have the highest level of play with development academy teams. However, the reality is that some players have the skill set to play and have not been identified, or they are already content with the highest level of play that they are already competing in the other 2 associations. However, the development academy teams have now been discontinued due to a lack of funding, and this leaves many players, coaches, and families to wonder where it is they will play next, as new leagues are created to fill in the void. In comparison to England, the Football Association has more control over the development of players in that country. There are categories 1 through 4, with category 1 usually being the most funded and usually strongest teams. Having a smaller country has its perks, as it requires less travel and it has closer competition, and this provides the advantage of creating the FA for the whole country. These past 2 years, I have tried out for the Olympic Development Program through U.S. Youth Soccer. I have been selected for the Georgia State team, and I train at least once a month at the Atlanta United training facilities. From there, because of my skill set, I was then chosen for the Southeast Region team, which is comprised of players all throughout the Southeast region of the country. From there, we competed with and trained with many top teams in Barcelona, Spain, and Costa Rica. While I'm part of an elite U.S. development team, playing against second-level teams in Spain and first-level teams in Costa Rica proved to be quite difficult, and it showed the gaps that exist in training and player development. Another downfall is the business aspect of the sport. In the U.S., club soccer can be very expensive and can range from $400 up to $1,750 per season. Moreover, this does not include fees for kits, travel, referees, or tournaments. Some soccer clubs offer scholarships to levy the cost of playing, but sometimes it is not enough for families to continue supporting their player in the sport. These expenses are massive because of lack of funding from soccer associations in the United States. In England, for example, they have the Football Association that controls the Football League and the Premier League to fund these programs. Families are hardly charged for participating, and they may only pay for their kits. In Europe, soccer development is more about who has the skill level to play more than who has the money to play. In the US, funding for soccer is insufficient to support families and consequently for the player development. As you can see in the United States, the top 5 men's soccer clubs generate roughly from $395 up to $500 million in annual revenue, whereas the top 5 men's soccer clubs from Europe generate from $2.6 to over $4 billion in annual revenue. This goes to show that European countries invest a greater deal into player development, and have the cultural support to create the top teams in the world. My hope is that the US will adopt some of these practices that have been in Europe for many decades. By adopting these practices, the U.S. men's national team will not only stand out among professional sports here in the U.S., but in the soccer community around. In conclusion, the U.S. soccer mentality and culture, player development, and creating one top league will provide order into the competition and level of play. Also, concentrating on the aspect of player development instead of making the sport a business will help focus on the matter at hand and success.